purpose of this lecture is to go over the different ways that students learn. There's no one way that's better than the others, but we tend to have a different preference. Each of us has a different preference. So what you need to understand is that when you're working with the community, that your students or participants are going to learn, but they're going to learn in different ways. So what type of learner are you? This is important to know for a variety of reasons. And after this slide presentation, there will be a survey for you to take to identify the type of learner you are, or what your learning preferences are. So a key point here is that we tend to teach the way we learn. So if we have a preference for one style of learning, we tend to teach that way. And that's problematic because if we only teach the way we learn, then we're not going to reach the most students or the most learners. So I'm going to go over the different types of learners. An intrapersonal learner is someone who likes to work alone. So if you're having group work, intrapersonal learners tend to have problems with this. They do better with individual projects and self-paced learning, and they'd rather not participate in large group discussions. So in order to encourage their participation, you can use individual projects, you can use think, pair, share, because they are okay sharing information in small groups. You can use self-paced activity, and you can relate learning to people personally. The next type of learner is an interpersonal learner. And interpersonal learners like to work with others. They like groups and they like large discussions. They like group projects and they like to be around other people. So to reach this type of learner, you need to consider sharing and relating, interviewing, and relating and comparing. You also need to look at possibly using group projects, discussions, and projects involving other people. And that's because this type of learner enjoys engaging with other people. The next type of learner is an auditory learner. This learner learns by hearing the material. They'll often repeat material aloud or in their head to remember it, and they do better when hearing the material rather than reading it. So things like lectures, discussions, encouraging them to read aloud when they're studying, these are all ways to get an auditory learner to learn the material. The next type of learner is a mathematical or logical learner. Mathematical or logical learners like experiments, they like to ask questions. They like logic and problem solving, and they're very good with numbers and mathematical problems. This type of learner relates to charts and pie graphs. They like to find relationships and abstract patterns, so if you can encourage that, that helps them learn. And they also, you can also teach through problem solving and scenarios. These are all ways to engage the mathematical or logical learner. Musical learners are very similar to mathematical learners because what a lot of people do not understand is that music is very much based on math. The counts, the rests, how long beats take, all of that is mathematical. But musical learners like to hum and sing. They often play instruments. They easily pick up rhythms and pitches, and they can hear individual instruments in the musical pieces. So if an orchestra is playing, a musical learner can actually hear individual instruments, like they can hear the horns, they can hear the clarinets, they can hear the cymbals, whereas a non-musical learner tends to just hear the whole thing together. If you want to address musical learners in your presentations, you can play music during class. You can encourage quiet work time. You can also encourage them to play music while they're studying, or tell them to put their knowledge into a song or a poem. A kinesthetic learner likes to move around. In studies of elementary school children, it's been found that boys are more kinesthetic than girls are. And that's one reason why boys have more difficulty in elementary school, because it's really not designed for kinesthetic learners. So these learners like to move around. They usually participate in sports or exercise, and they're more coordinated than other people. The way to reach this type of learner is to encourage classroom activities where there's movement from your instructional methods class. For example, around the world, four corners, learning stations, moving from one group to another. And if you encourage them to study and listen to their notes while exercising, sometimes that's helpful. Tactile learners learn through touch, and in reality, touch is the most powerful sense in learning. People who are tactile learners tend to work well with their hands, and they're typically good with crafts. If you can provide activities where students manipulate learning, like flashcards, labs, models, anything where they can touch something, those projects where a model needs to be made, any of those ways that people are touching the material, that helps them learn. Visual learners learn best by seeing the materials. So if they see slides, even without audio, they are good at remembering that. They tend to like the visual arts. They tend to be more creative. They're imaginative. They're very good with puzzles and mazes and reading maps, because that's very visual. And if you want to reach this type of learner, you should include visuals like slides with the lectures. You can use timelines and puzzles, and you can encourage students to be imaginative, to write plays or draw or create an artistic creation of a concept. The linguistic learner likes to read, write, and tell stories. So they're very good at memorizing words, names, and places and dates, and they learn best by saying, seeing, and hearing the words. So if you have reading assignments, or you give writing assignments, or you teach vocabulary in a way where they draw an outline around the word to visualize the shape of a word, those are all ways to help a linguistic learner learn the material. So what's next? You need to think about the type of activities that you are going to put into your health fair. You also need to figure out what type of learner you are, so that you can venture outside of that comfort zone and incorporate other learning styles in your activities. One thing to remember is that everybody can learn, but not everybody learns the same day, and not everybody learns the same way. So if you can incorporate at least 3 different types of learning styles in your activities, you're much more likely to meet all the learners in the group.